Okay, so we've been talking about mental health, we've been talking about our own well-being and talking about positive and negative energies around mental health and well-being. So what I want to think about now is about our relationships and the relationships that are around us. Now, when we're talking about relationships, we're not just talking about romantic relationships, we're talking about relationships with co-workers, with friends, with family, with people who are part of our inner circle, and also people who are part of our sort of like wider networks and wider circle as well. The reality is that relationships are a good thing. They sort of like nourish you, they feed your soul, they give you a social network, they give you a positive vibe, and human connection is always good. As human beings, we always need to feel connected to other people. It's really, really important for us. So it's healthy, it's helpful, and it's also central to a positive outlook, a positive well-being and a positive energy in life. But it's not limited as well. So it's important that if we recognise those signs that we might be in a relationship that's actually unhealthy, or a relationship that might not be doing those, creating those positive energies for us, it's important that we acknowledge that, reflect upon that, and actually do what it takes to actually try to remedy that in some way in order to ensure that we are looking after our own well-being and our own energies as well. So I just wanted to run through a few of the warning signs really about maybe toxic relationships, and see if you can relate to any of those, and what we can maybe do about those in those circumstances, because obviously when it's very, very close networks, very close family, very close friends, sometimes it's difficult to sort of like disentangle as well, and that can add to that enormous overwhelming pressure. So the first kind of sign that you might be in a relationship that's not particularly healthy or conducive to your mental health and well-being is that you don't actually feel good. You don't feel good around that person, you don't feel positive, you don't feel happy, and you might have initially felt a great deal of positive vibes, positive energies, and usually that person would have been somebody who really brought a lot to your life, and you made that connection and you started to build that relationship and invest in that relationship socially, emotionally, psychologically, practically, etc. But if you find yourself not feeling good, or possibly even feeling inferior, feeling that you're not good enough, or even comparing yourself where you might maximise that person and their attributes, and you might minimise your own, or where you might start to question your own self-worth, or maybe not prioritise your own self-worth, maybe you're not yourself around that person, you find yourself diluting yourself and actually shrinking in order to enable that person to have more power over you in that particular relationship. So as you can see, this is not going to be healthy or helpful, and it's not actually going to make you feel good. And surely relationships, close relationships, are meant to be beneficial. They're there to ensure that you do feel good about yourself. So if you're treading on eggshells around a particular person, or certain topics or areas are off limits, so you always feel you've got to watch what you say or watch what you do, the reality is you're probably going to start to avoid that individual or that group or that person as well. Because what's happening is you're actually entering into a bit of a toxic environment, which isn't nice, isn't helpful, isn't particularly pleasant. So you might fear being put down or blame yourself because that person holds the power. You might think that you're not actually good enough. Now, we've got to remember that our self-esteem is how we feel about ourselves, and confidence is belief in our own ability. But it's actually married very closely with being assertive. And that's not being passive and just allowing somebody to walk all over us, but it's also not about being so rigid that we're aggressive, or that we can only be very tunnel visioned and only see our own perspective, or be aggressive in our behaviour, etc. Being assertive is about negotiating your own space in the world. It's about allowing yourself that freedom to be able to say, I appreciate you believe this, or you think this, or you've interpreted this in this way. However, I see it this way. What do you think? And what you actually do is you start to create healthier relationships. Okay, no problem.